Welcome to the Inspired Intentions podcast with Skyterra Wellness. If you've been too busy and not taking care of yourself, it's time to reset habits and plunge into your new normal. I'm Jeff, and Rachel's back here with us today, and we have a riveting talk that is going to be all about getting outside your comfort zone.
And we have a riveting guest who has been waiting.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
To be part of this podcast live.
Yeah. I felt it over the last few months as this is an important one for him. This is kind of right in his sweet spot of a topic that I really think he can help our listeners with today.
Yeah. And this is somebody that you've heard us talk about. He's done one podcast before, but now he's coming on, helping people get out of their comfort zone. And this is none other than our executive producer, Alan Broyhill. Hi, Alan.
Ooh, I can hear them.
Guys?
I can hear them cheering at home.
Great. I've been waiting, I've been on once. I've been waiting for weeks to get back on, defend myself a little bit here.
Yeah. And I think this topic in particular, we definitely will run through Alan's bio a little bit here in a second, but this topic in particular is more going to give you a better picture of who he is and what he has not only done for our guests, but how he tends to operate to really help people get outside their comfort zone in a way that is very unexpected. And I think when folks are thinking about changes, this is the Inspired Intentions podcast, taking those intentions and trying to change is best done with folks who get it.
Yeah. So Alan is our recreation lead at Skyterra. He's also our creative lead as part of the marketing department. So all of the photos, all of the videos, those are Alan's handiwork. And of course, as we mentioned, he's the executive director of the podcast. He works very hard, which is why we like to bring him sometimes lattes.
Yes,
occasionally, yeah.
He actually really likes lattes, and we've been holding out this long. And yeah, I don't know what 26-year-old man is still ordering lattes. However, that's how great he is.
He's a Renaissance man.
They keep calling me that, everybody. It's great though. I'm happy to be here, and yes, I do like an occasional latte
with whipped cream.
We missed the whipped cream, I think.
That's okay.
Yeah, we figured he'd see the froth and be...
As long as it wasn't like a peppermint or...
Oh yeah, like an eggnog or something like that.
Oh, that would be terrible.
So, Alan, let's talk about when guests come to Skyterra, they're probably most likely going to meet you as part of our recreation offerings. And I think that, when people make the decision to come to a wellness retreat, they're probably thinking, dial in my nutrition, dial in my fitness, maybe not necessarily thinking about adding something new to their repertoire of what they do in terms of staying active. But that's something that you do for them. So can you tell us, what is recreation? What are the offerings at Skyterra? What might people find?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like your point. A lot of people do come to Skyterra, and I would say most all of them are not expecting to necessarily gain something new in the rec department, right? Being outside. I get a few people that'll be like, I saw we had fly fishing and we came for sure because of fly fishing. But
it's true.
It's one of those things. So like fly fishing, I've been doing that for a long time. So I teach a class that's a 101 fly casting and what is fly fishing class. Fly fishing has become incredibly popular. So it's one of those things that I think it was Forbes magazine even put an article about how it's become like golf, right?
Wow.
We do things like kayaking, horseback riding, archery, a lot of hiking, destination hiking, advanced hiking, everything in between. I feel like I get to give a lot of people that new perspective, like what Rachel was talking about, on something that they never thought that they were going to, because it's incredibly easy at Skyterra to just say, I'm going to take an hour and try this. Whereas I would never have the equipment. I'd never have the time to do this really anywhere else.
So there's a lot of opportunity around the rec scene. And I think even some of the things that Alan didn't mention was he actually teaches a self-defense class and Tai Chi as well. So yeah. I think this is where his nickname stems from.
Yeah, what doesn't he do?
I know, it's pretty remarkable, believe it or not. I often think at night of how I could be more like Alan. But I think those classes are good examples of things you may not expect to do that is aligned with what we're discussing here today.
Absolutely.
What's your background, Alan?
In which department?
All of them.
Yeah, a little life history about me, and a lot of the guests that have come, I get to share stuff like with them, but I grew up outside. I mean, quite literally, I grew up outside. I grew up on a huge farm, and I had to learn how to do all kinds of stuff to keep the farm going, right? And then we filled our free time with everything that was outside. I was never really the inside video game type person, you know. That's definitely where I would say a lot of my outdoor recreation stems from. My parents threw me in martial arts when I was a kid. I ended up loving it. That's where the Tai Chi comes from. That's where the self-defense comes from. You know, and all of these things have become such a big part of my life and definitely shaped me to the person I am.
That's great.
Yeah. So like you had that early on experience with being outdoors that I don't think everyone, especially in your generation, necessarily has grown up with. And I know our guests who come here, there's a lot of those types of activities that they may have not have grown up doing. But it sounds like in your experience, that's a big part of what has led you to be very passionate with our guests and to show them that, wow, even if you didn't do it when you were growing up, this is something new you could add to your routine that you may have not even thought about.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I remember actually Jeff was the one that interviewed me, and when I applied for the job, and I remember him asking me a specific question. It was, what does the outdoors mean to you? And I don't know if he remembers what I replied or not, but
I tend to just say some things sometimes, and
know.
usually they come out right.
But my response was, it's been my entire life. So,
do you want to give us a little background on like the technical side, just how you came to be interested in that, and does that have any relationship to the recreation?
It 100% does. Yeah. So it all stems from fly fishing. If you guys were to see me outside of work somewhere, I would probably be fishing. And I started fly fishing with my best friend in early high school. And it came along with it that it was like we wanted to take pictures of what we were doing, right? And we were showing that to our friends, our family, and we were making connections with other fishermen. And so like I bought a $200 point and shoot waterproof camera, and I used that thing until it didn't work anymore. And so it was kind of neat. Just to make a long story short, I kept taking pictures. I got an internship and then began working for a fly fishing magazine for a few years, which stemmed the photography part. And then that came with an education, right, along the way. And then now I'm at Skyterra.
We're happy to have you.
Yeah, it's
we
awesome.
are extremely grateful to have you. Extremely grateful. I don't think would you be behind the technical side, Rachel?
No, we were just saying we'd probably just be staring at each other.
Yeah, we'd just be doing mini workouts.
Yeah, recording it on our phone.
Yeah, figuring it out.
This should be okay, right? Alan, would you describe yourself as an adventurer?
Absolutely, yeah. My family history is Czechoslovakian, and they kind of gypsies, nomads were often what we were termed as. So like I feel like that's in my blood. Like I love to explore, I love to see new things. I don't always necessarily feel fulfilled if I'm not knowingly going to go see something I haven't seen before, fish a new spot, do a new hike, travel somewhere new.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So it's like part of your being to like always be looking for that next new thing, that even if it's as small as moving downstream or as small as taking a hike a different direction, for you, it really sounds like that's where you thrive and enjoy things the most.
100%. Yeah. And definitely like even just a different time of year or a different direction for sure. I mean, we, often enough we get caught up in doing things one way and we never see the other side or the other perspective of something. And it's incredibly easy to just turn around, do a 180 and also see that other side.
Yeah. Shift that perspective.
Do you see guests who, and I think, for a lot of people, you get comfortable, like we were saying, you get comfortable in the routine and trying new things can be difficult. Are you able to, when you have guests who say, I've never done anything like this before, how are you able to get them through it? And do you have an example?
Yeah, I can't tell you the last time that I had a class that I didn't hear those exact words that you just said. And I always just simply kind of brush it off and respond that I've never had somebody come to my Tai Chi class and say that they're an expert or that they do this all the time, or that everybody's here to learn, right? And I love to teach. So, bringing it back with an example of just kind of branching out a little bit, right? I had a guest a while back that she made a bunch of friends while she was here. It was a larger group. We had a really great week. I got to do a bunch of hikes, right? And she was doing most of the education stuff, and they encouraged her to come hang out with me, which I love. I love it when all the guests come and hang out and do hikes. And
it's so powerful when you see a collective group of people.
It is.
They're here for a week. They're trying to reset their behaviors and to just create change in their life, and how that energy can actually change what you're describing, like change how someone decides on how they finish their week off.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is directly what she did. She's committed to going on a hike. She said, I'll do it. If you don't know anything about the way our schedules work, or if you have been here, then you do know that the hikes kind of build on themselves. The beginning of the week might tend to be a little easier. The end of the week, we have an advanced hike. So by the end of the week, like I said, this guest was like, I'll do it, but it's the advanced hike.
And she hadn't done any hikes.
She hadn't
before.
done a single hike.
She's
been doing education, which is what she needed.
Like the advanced underneath it.
The asterisk.
Yeah.
Impressive. And so she went all in. So her friends were there for support, and it was really great. But we got into the hike, and we were going, and she was an underestimator. She was way more capable than what she gave herself credit for whatever reason. And she hung out in the back. She didn't need to. And I think it was because she didn't want to bother anybody else or slow anybody else down.
I think that's a common thing people say too. I'm sure we'll get into that
absolutely
later.
Yeah. And so we got into the hike, and if you can think of the time window, we're doing miles and miles, right? And we probably got about halfway through, and she just kind of slowed down and stopped. And it wasn't really because she was incapable. I think that she had just gotten in her head that much of not being able to spread her wings a little bit, right? And she said, could you just come back around and get me on your way out? And if anybody or our listeners know anything about certain hikes, some are a loop and some are an in and out. This was not an in and out. This was a loop. So there was no way we were coming back to the spot. And it was, multi-miles. So I told her, basically said, I was encouraging her that she had this, like she's not out of breath. There's no reason why she can't continue on, right? You got this. And so she kept going, and we ended up seeing, I think it was like 6 waterfalls that day, and we made it to the end. And as we're approaching, she realizes we're approaching the end, right? Mm-hmm. She comes and she dips back into the back, and she literally breaks down in tears. And I thought she was upset, like maybe I had pushed her too hard or something like that. And so I kind of like let everybody else go, roll back with her just to go back and talk with her, try and see if I could help in any way. And she was like, no, it's nothing like that. I never thought I would be able to do this. I've never been able to walk up my stairs to work. I just did almost 6 miles in less than 3 hours. I did it. And she like literally in tears. Mm-hmm. And it was powerful. Like the people in the group felt that, but it hit me super hard. And she never put it on me. Like I'm not putting it on myself. It's nothing that I did, but it was just seeing that from her.
That's wild. Wow. You would never think that the outdoors, with the perspective that is sometimes placed on it, would elicit such an emotional response. Where I think there is so much to that story and so much like build up that not only did she have people that encourage her, mm-hmm. but she, like you were explaining, literally didn't know what she was capable of. And I think that's where we all get stuck at times. We tend to think that this is my zone, this is what I do. We identify with how we've lived. And sometimes we don't take that extra step to really be like, wow, I might be more capable than I think I am.
Absolutely.
And Alan, I really like the way that you, at that point where she felt like she couldn't go on, you pointed out certain things that were true to her, which was, you're not breathing hard. You can do this. Whereas, she probably was just thinking, my gosh, I've gone farther than I've gone in a really long time. And you let her know that she could continue forward.
I'm pretty sure now thinking about it, I told her, you've been freaking killing it.
Those were the words.
Yeah,
huh?
I think those were the words, and it resonated with her for sure.
I think that's such an important point because like when you look at fitness, when you look at people getting back into something that's physical, there can be a lot of fear around it. There can be a lot of like, oh my gosh, I don't know if my body is capable of this now. I used to be like this. Should I even give it a try? And so I think that's what we need to share with our listeners today is how do people get under the hood of that thinking? How do they start to remove the fear in getting an experience like this participant had?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for sure, if I had to make a term for it, the fear of the unknown is the biggest thing that is holding people back from a new experience. We have probably all felt it in our own way. It doesn't have to be outdoor recreation. I know that I have. I would say, to your point, Jeff, that one thing that makes it more accessible for you is exactly what we experienced from this story with her are the people around you. Even from my perspective, I'm a guide, right? I take these people on hikes. I teach them how to do archery. I'm showing them, I'm guiding them how to do that. You don't need necessarily to have a guide. If you have a friend that will help you along that way, it makes it way more accessible. You're like, wow, they can do it. I can do it. Or they're with me, right? The fear of the unknown, doing it alone, for sure.
Yeah. The positive reinforcement of someone there beside you. Like when you look at like human beings in general, like we are designed to be social. We are designed to have people around us that make us better. And I think that's what's great about just opportunities to go hiking is that you do get to be with other people. You do get to experience something new with folks who are there for you.
I think the other power too comes from just being in the outdoors, because just to go back to what you were saying, Jeff, which was, you and I have a background in fitness. We've both seen people who think they couldn't finish a workout and are able to do it. But if you can't finish a workout in a gym, or you do finish the workout in the gym, you're still in the gym and you open the door and you walk up the hill, or you get in your car and you go home. When you're on a hike and you don't know if you can finish it, you're out in the elements. Yeah. I mean, that can be a little bit even more intimidating and scary. And so when you're able to overcome something when you're in the outdoors, I think it makes it even more powerful. I'm sure you see it.
Yeah, absolutely. That fear of the unknown. Where's the trail at? Where am I going to end up at? What am I going to see? What if it gets dark? There's a lot of aspects out there that are playing against you whenever you're outside, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Are there any limiting factors for people that make activities intimidating? So, we get a range of ages and, injury histories, guests at Skyterra. How do you account for all of that?
Oh, man. Yeah, there's always limiting factors, and most of them I would say are in your head. There's always going to be something that can hold us back if we let it, right? You don't have to push yourself. Getting outside, getting into the outdoors, experiencing that new experience. I often tell people you just have to go at your own pace. You just have to do it and get it underneath your belt, or at least try it, start it out. We have a lead and a sweep hiker on every single hike that we do, right? And that's how most hiking outfitters operate. And
can you define that, Alan?
Right. And so your lead would be me, right? So I'm in the front. I know the trail. I know where we're going. The sweep is the person in the back, right? And so if you think about if you were to try and get outside, hiking in specific, say I go hiking, right? And think of yourself as not trying to be the lead, trying to be the sweep. You're much more likely to not get in your own head and be able to make it through something that you never thought that you could, right?
Yeah, because you're following what others are doing in front of you. And I think that alone does take some... it takes some commitment to be like, okay, I'm following my main man, Alan. He knows where we're going, and we're just gonna see where this takes us.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think some people too feel like they need to be the best, or they need to quote unquote achieve, and there's really no way to do that in a hike.
Yeah. No, I mean, you can try and time yourself. I know a lot of people that do that. People count steps and things like that, but it's all about perspective, I would say. People often have a fear of failing, right? They don't want to not make it, kind of like my example. They don't want to not make it, right? But if you have the perspective of the experience, then even if you never made it to, I call it like destination hiking, to see the overlook, to see the waterfall, whatever, then you know how far you made it, but it's every little thing along the way. I actually got called out for something right after I first started this job. And I do this thing and I never knew that I did it. And is
it order lattes from random places?
That's exactly what it was. Okay. Yeah, I had them delivered to the trailheads, and I reach out and I touch everything.
Oh wow!
I never knew that I actually did it. Like what I mean by that is like I'm touching leaves, I'm touching bark on a tree. I had a guest say it's like I'm saying hello to old friends, but really it's like. For me, I started thinking about why. And it leads back to the failing thing. I'm bringing it full circle here. I'm out there for not just a destination. I'm not out there to get my steps. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. It's a bonus, but I'm there for the experience. And so I'm taking every little thing in that I can, right? Mm-hmm. The feel of the leaves, the smells, the feel of the bark, the color of the light, right? And so even if you don't make it where you want to go, if you really slow down, which is something we all have trouble doing in our daily mm-hmm. lives, no matter whether we're outside or inside, and just take everything in, it's incredibly powerful.
Alan, so it almost sounds like some physical touch and noticing each step you're taking while you're on the hike is more important than the actual distance of the hike or the expectation around I'm going to a certain number of steps, because I think that's where we, just in life in general, we can be so focused on the destination that we don't slow down to soak in the experience.
The journey.
Yeah,
absolutely. We think of things very much so, and hiking especially, as A to B.
Yeah. And I don't know about you guys, but I love to do nice, slow, breathe through my nose kind of hikes. Like my objective when I'm outdoors is not to be crushing it. It's to really be doing some, positive movement for that day, but to kind of regroup that fitness is different than hiking, and both things can help us get outside of our comfort zone. But I don't think everyone needs to look at like outdoor experiences as like it's a race. And that's where like with folks who are new to our program or haven't hiked in a long time, don't want to be left behind. They don't want to feel like they're holding someone back. And so as long as you can use the word that Alan used earlier, which was pace can apply to almost everything you do. So we should always pace how we're living. We should always pace what we do. And it's very difficult to know what pace is right in the beginning, especially if you haven't been doing that activity in a long time.
Right. Absolutely.
And we talk a lot on this podcast about mindfulness. And I like your example, mm-hmm. Alan, of how you can make hiking really mindful, which is, being aware of the textures and being aware of your surroundings and reaching out and touching them and saying hello to the leaves and hello to the bark.
Right.
It's just a way to, a really tactile way to bring that mindfulness front and center.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you might lose your friends if you do it too often in front of large groups. But other than that, I really think it's kind of how Alan rolls, is like there's always kind of a deeper side to this guy,
yeah,
which really allows our guests to kind of learn to notice those things and to be mindful.
And I think something, not to talk about Alan in the third person while he's here,
I'm
but
pretty sure this happens at work constantly. So we should just keep it going.
Yeah. Alan has such a love for the outdoors, and it's contagious. And I think that, for our guests, even for folks who work at Skyterra, listening to him talk about the outdoors, watching him interact with the outdoors is just really powerful and really moving for people.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Oh.
Yeah. It's been in my entire life, for sure.
That's public appreciation. Did you hear that?
I heard
that was
that.
Awesome.
Alan, how do people grow when they step outside their comfort zone?
Yeah, I know I keep on going back to this story, but it's just powerful, right? So the story I was talking about earlier about the accomplished hiker, right? That's what we'll call her. What did she essentially do when she did that whole big loop? And she finished it. She gained a new confidence, right, for what, like you both said, her limitations were, herself, her mindfulness, right? She went back afterwards and started walking stairs at work, right? So small things, right? She gained that extra amount of confidence. It's just super powerful. Like when you finish something, or even if you don't, you can gain that new amount of confidence because you can always exceed. You can always grow, just like everything that's around you when you're outside.
Yeah. And building confidence is the third step in the triangle of change.
That's right.
So it's almost like this type of experience, anytime you're going to put yourself in a place that is somewhat the unknown, you have the opportunity to build confidence. And I think with like health and wellness in general, there's two C's to it. We have to be competent in the behaviors that are going to get us to that ultimate vision. But then we also have to be confident that these are the right behaviors for me. This is where I should start today. And so I think there's a lot to change as we slowly take new steps, like, walk up those stairs. That's building confidence in a direction that it's seemingly small, but it's super large at the same time.
And I like what you said too, Alan, about whether you finish something or not. Just having the confidence to be able to attempt it can be life-changing too.
Absolutely, yeah. I would really say that if we had to speak towards another part of that, right? It's not only that you really understand your limitations, but they really begin to understand themselves more. So limitations, you could think of that maybe as physical, right? But also mental, right? Your mental limitations. Often enough, like her, it was just herself holding herself back, right? Like when I have people that do archery with me that have never done archery, or some people are like Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts or in high school or at college club or something like that, and they've never done it, and they hear that so satisfying sound of that thwack of the target when they hit it, right? And archery in itself is very much so a little bit of physical, a lot of mental. We do recurve archery. For any of our listeners that are out there and we're curious, it's a little different than using sights on a bow, right? It's two eyes open, it's feel, but it's also mental, right? And so that completion of that sound of the arrow hitting the target is right along those lines of building that confidence, understanding your limitations, right? But then also really gaining that appreciation. And it's almost like when you get outside, it's almost like peaceful once you finally start to figure that out, that mental side of things that you can really gain.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think you always think about that. When you're doing an activity that's adventurous or recreation-based, it's like there's more to it than the physical is what I'm hearing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Where does the Tai Chi come into play? What does that do for guests?
Oh, man, I've gotten all kinds of answers. I would say that without getting on a big thing about Tai Chi, I love Tai Chi because it really tends to slow people down, right? When you think of what Tai Chi is, it's probably not what it actually is, right? You think of maybe like a big group of people in a park all doing the same thing really slow at the same time. Tai Chi was a martial art. It definitely helped to build a lot of different things like balance and breath work, blood flow, confidence, strength, but in its own manner, right? It's still a form of self-defense. And it really does help them to understand that slowing down is incredibly important and really focusing. One of the form that I tend to teach during my class very much so focuses on breath work. We have a class on breath work. We focus on breath work in our workout classes. I come at it from a slightly different perspective. Whereas breathing properly, as Jeff will tell you, is incredibly important. He can tell us that most people don't breathe properly, right?
Large majority of people are breathing incorrectly.
Right.
That is a fact.
How often do we mindfully control our breath?
That's a pretty big question.
Not often, right?
Well, it's autonomic, so it happens whether we are mindful of it or not.
Just like a heartbeat. So I come at the Tai Chi, the form that I teach actually teaches us to extend and control our breath down to having no air left, and then being able to take that big breath in, that control.
Yeah. And I think that's an interesting point in that, like with breathing patterns, there's so much we can do to influence them. And like, just like what you were saying about being outdoors and touching and feeling, like Tai Chi is almost the same application, but you focus on the breath, you focus on small movements, whether it's through the arms or the legs, to develop a deeper connection to balance as well. So I think it relates a lot to what you tend to work with guests on just in general.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I love teaching it. It's so much fun. I get so many people that come out of that class and they're like, I never thought I would enjoy that, but that was awesome.
That says a lot about you as a teacher.
I think it's more about the Tai Chi for sure. I love teaching that, and I feel like it has a place for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not something you're like, man, I better get to my Tai Chi class this week.
Right.
So it's almost like in line with what we're discussing today. Like, it's outside your comfort zone, but in a different way of slowing down.
Absolutely. Yeah, most people think they're going to like fall asleep. Yeah. Not even close to the
happening.
Case. No, definitely not.
Alan, what do you say? Is there something, I know we talked about, the woman who was having difficulty on the hike, pointing out that she was doing a really great job and that her breathing seemed to be doing fine. Is there something that you say consistently to people when they're hemming and hawing about trying something new? Or is it different for everybody?
It's really different for everybody. Like, not everybody really is verbal about it. Most people that I have an interaction, like say for instance, I walk up to you and I'm like, hey, you coming on the hike? And they're, I don't, maybe not. There's a lot of hesitation, but sometimes people just don't say anything, right? And they just kind of deflect off of it. I really try and break it down for them. In those exact moments, I try and make it so obtainable. That would be a word, I guess, that would describe that. That really, like, it's not as difficult as what you think it is. Don't psych yourself out. I know that you can do it. You should come, right? Mm-hmm. And it's not like they don't want to. It's just that they don't think it's obtainable for them.
Well, you provide them that initial confidence is what it sounds like. Like, regardless of how you're going to deliver that message to them, you're going to make sure that they know that they can do it. Because oftentimes, many of the folks that we have the privilege of working with, they don't believe in themselves anymore. They're fed up with how their body has been performing, with how their mind has been performing. And sometimes they really just need that person around them to give them the extra confidence so then they can build it along the way once they get out on the trail.
Listen, I've only lost that one person.
Oh my gosh. I'm surprised we were able to get the podcast up and running after we lost that one person.
I know. No, like there's never been, I've done so many hikes so far, and there has never been somebody that hasn't made it.
Mm-hmm. I like what you said too earlier about the primary limitations are in your mind.
Absolutely.
The limitations that you put on yourself.
Which is that same conversation when I have with people when they're like, I don't know if I can make it. That's just in their head.
Would you say like it definitely takes like two to tango when it comes to like getting outside your comfort zone? So you've got Alan who's giving some positive reinforcement. I think a word that we haven't used yet is I think we all have to take a step back and be open. Mm-hmm. Not we close ourselves off. We're not as open to maybe new experiences once we've been in our comfort zone. So do you have any ways of helping people feel more open in general besides, just the positive encouragement?
Yeah, if you begin to show people what it is that they get out of it, not to say that should be the only thing, but when you start to show people what it is that they can obtain, right, they tend to start to be more like, oh, that's pretty cool. Right? Like even just a picture. Like an example would be like I do a sunset hike, which is one of my favorite things to do. And if it's like post dinner and they're like, I don't know if I want to make it or I don't know if I want to go. And you show them that picture, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I should go see that. Right? Or I should go do that. And then it's that next step. Like, I know that you can do this. Mm-hmm. We do it every week. It's awesome. Right? They're like, oh, I can do that. And then they're there and they see it and they experience that, and it's so powerful. It's such a cool experience.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about vision and seeing you where you want to be. And this is almost an example of that, of like you're guiding the process and them seeing how much of a moving experience they're going to be able to have. And, you know, the days can be busy at Skyterra. When you're coming for a week, you're trying to get every class in, you're trying to do everything. And it's almost like in this scenario, being able to create an environment that allows people to I think there's FOMO out there. You know, FOMO is a real thing. So for our audience, fear of missing out. And so with that, I think that's a good place to begin, is to don't be like overly worried about what you might miss out on, but really focus on, wow, how, like, this is something I don't normally do in my environment. I have the chance of doing this. And so, wow, I may as well do it. I'm in the moment. I'm here. Let's go.
Yeah, and listen, that doesn't have to be at Skyterra. That has to be in your daily life, in your normal life. If your friend asks you to do something and you're not quite so sure about it, but you've maybe wanted to try it, why not? Hopefully I say this right. When you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Mm-hmm. That's something that Jeff likes to say.
You've heard of that one.
Yeah, I've heard of that one. Right?
Right.
It's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I think there's overlap with that for sure, where I think in that friend example of, if you have friends around you who are being kind of that positive support, they're creating the openness that you deserve, and you continue to say no to that person, I do think our supports around us will stop asking the question of like, mm-hmm. do you want to do this? Because then they start to normalize the responses that you're providing them. And so it's really important that I think we stay open, we stay adventurous, and don't say no, specifically at times that feel really right for you to go, even when it may be right outside that comfort zone.
Absolutely.
So, Alan, I think that's one of the things, if we're trying to give people some tips on how to get out of their comfort zones when they don't have a guide like you, when they're not at Skyterra, one of the first things would probably be, it sounds like, don't say no when your friend asks you to do something that you might want to do. What are some other ways that people can take, you know, something that maybe they've been a little bit worried about trying or haven't done that yet? How can they do it if they don't have an Alan in their life?
Yeah, I would say a big one is try to identify what you're looking for. What I mean by that is, like, if an overlook doesn't appeal to you, but a waterfall does, that's a super simple example, right? Or A versus B. Try and figure out what it is that you want to achieve out of it, and then start working towards that, right? It gives you that obtainable goal, right? Something to shoot for. And then, you know, if once you get into that experience and say you're going and you're doing that hike, so you see that waterfall, right? You're getting along there. Give the whole experience a chance before you make the judgment call. I've had a lot of people with me before, especially fly fishing, that they get into it and they try to do the cast. The cast in the fly fishing is incredibly difficult to learn when you're first starting out. You think it's an unobtainable goal. And then you get into it and say you hook your first fish. I've had so many people just freak out and be like, I love this. Whereas before, they didn't even have to say anything. I can see it on their face that they're hesitant, that they're not sure, that it doesn't seem obtainable, like this isn't for me. Like, you have to give that whole experience a full, like, dive all the way in before you really make that judgment call.
That's a great lesson for everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Kind of all along the lines of what I was talking about earlier, definitely don't get excuse me, caught up in all of the big details, but also focus on the little details as well. So don't just look at that obtainable goal, look at the A to B journey along the way.
I think those are some great tips. You know, start small, focus on what's going to get you to that next point. And yeah, I mean, map out what that experience is going to look like for you. Because until you are very focused and have a positive attitude towards trying something new, I think it's difficult to really get the emotions and get the experience that you're talking about.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And if I had to give you one more, it's a strong one, but it is okay to fail. It is okay to not make it, right? And to turn around and go back, or to miss the target, or to miss the fish, lose the fish. That's one thing that has always driven me to go back and do it again and finish it. Maybe it's my personality, but it's definitely okay to fail.
It's another good life lesson from Alan.
Yeah. I think we're going to be getting a lot of emails about Alan and some of these mic dropping moments today.
I think so too.
And my latte preference.
Yeah, I think that those are the top two things we'll probably be getting some message around.
Did we miss anything, Alan?
We could talk for a long time about the outdoors, but if you're really trying to step outside your comfort zone, spread your wings a little bit, just give it a chance. You can do it. You just got to make it obtainable.
Spread your wings. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks so much, Alan.
Thanks, guys. I have thoroughly enjoyed being behind the mic for once again.
We might let you do it again.
Yeah, you're going to be allowed back for sure.
Maybe
we appreciate you.
I've been wanting to try beatboxing, so maybe I'll give that a shot next time.
Okay. All right. We can feel that out.
All right.
Leave some time for that.
All right, guys. Thank you so much.
The Inspired Intentions podcast is a production of Skyterra Wellness. Special thanks to our executive producer, the one and only Alan Broyhill. Send us your questions and comments to inspiredintentions@skyterrawellness.com. Rate and review us. Give us 5 stars on iTunes and everywhere podcasts can be found.
You could even give Alan 5 stars
You
as
could.
well.
You could. He deserves it. Join us next week as we cut through the unrealistic noise on diets and fitness and show you how healthy living fits seamlessly into your already busy life.